You're listening to the Profit Connections podcast. Entrepreneurs and franchise owners, you'll want to tune in. If you're looking to create a rock-solid business, sick of being stuck on the plateau, and ready to kick it up more than just a notch, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Sharon Galuzzo, and I believe in unleashing your full potential to create resilient, successful businesses that in turn make significant positive impacts in our world. Welcome to the Profit Connections podcast. Welcome back to the fifth installment of our 5-part series on Legendary Business from Rats to Riches. Legendary Business from Rats to Riches is my Amazon best-selling book, and there's also a workbook that goes along with it, both of them by the same name. And we have been visiting all of the rats in Legendary Business from Rats to Riches. Now, you might be saying, what is she talking about? Rats? So let me fill you in. So when I wrote my book, I wanted to focus on 5 of the most common mistakes business owners make in their business, how to identify them, and how to fix them. So I wrote this book, and it was hard-hitting, all information you needed to know. And I gave it to some of my friends to read, and they came back and said, it's not very good. And another friend said to me, hey, business books that have stories are more impactful and people can connect to them better. So I went back and looked at my material, and instead of writing 1 story, I actually wrote 5. So all of the mistakes that business owners make, I turned into rats, and I gave all of the rats a backstory, a personality, and I also hired a local artist to make illustrations of them. So if you can see this on video, this is Charlotte Rat, and she is a tentative rat. And let me tell you about Charlotte. Charlotte is all of us sometimes, I would venture to say. And she is very excited about her business. And when she started her business, she wanted to know everything there was to know about running a business because she didn't really know what she was doing, but she was determined to learn, and she was determined to do the things that were supposed to be done. And so she spent a lot of time training, going to classes, getting a mentor, a coach, doing all kinds of things, any kind of training, workshop, lunch and learn, she was there. And she had her learning hat on, and she was taking notes. And every single one had workbooks and handouts and handy reference material, right? So as she went to all of these workshops and conferences and classes, she would bring the material back, and she made a corner of her desk that was just for all of this information. And it was amazing. It was really easy to reach. She could just grab it and go. And not only was Charlotte a learner, Charlotte is a doer. She does the stuff that they say to do. And so one time she went to a workshop, and it was on vlogging and blogging and getting you the word out, like just writing articles, that kind of thing. And so she went back home, and she was so excited. In fact, on the drive home, she thought of the perfect name for her blog. And so she got home, and she started brainstorming topics so she could write these blogs, and she had 8 topics. She spent a lot of time getting it done. And so she was really good. The first week she posted her blog, and it was amazing. And the second week she posted her blog, and it was great. And then the third week she posted it, honestly, a little bit late. And then she was going to this new class, and this new class was on LinkedIn and how to get LinkedIn to help you build your business, build your sphere of influence and your connections, and how people were using LinkedIn to do business. So then she was like, oh, now I have to work on my LinkedIn. And so she took all of the information from the workshop, and she came home, and she looked for just the perfect photo because there couldn't be anybody else in the photo, and it needed to look professional, and it needed to just be a headshot level, not like a full full body picture. So she spent hours trying to find just the right picture. And then she started filling in her profile. And then she started doing all of the things that she needed to do on LinkedIn. And then she heard about another social media platform and she started setting up that social media platform because she could have a personal and a business page on that platform. And so she learned everything she could about that one. And she started posting on that social platform. But honestly, that was one where she had a lot of friends and sometimes she would get lost. And then she would look up and 2 hours had passed and she had been just playing on social media and not getting any work done. And then there was another thing. And Charlotte became the queen of the next best thing. Whatever next best thing there was, she learned about it. She got excited about it. She started working on it and implementing it until there was a new next best thing. And then she was off to that platform as well. And what happens? So here's what happens whenever you do that. You never get any traction in any one thing because Charlotte started them and stopped them. She would start them, be very enthusiastic, and then quickly abandon them for the next thing. So she did not understand that doing all of these things partially and running off to the next best thing was actually killing her business. And that little pile of manuals she had on the corner of her desk has now grown into a mountain of manuals that are collecting dust. And she never goes back to look at them because she's constantly looking for the next big thing. She is overwhelmed and she is oversaturated. It would not be an exaggeration to describe Charlotte as a sponge. She took in everything and everything and everything and everything. And suddenly she found herself completely oversaturated. She could take in no more information. And she had started and abandoned so many things that she found herself stuck. She is a tentative rat. And you know what Charlotte did? Charlotte tried everything and fell into the trap of the 3-letter word that was killing her business, TRY. When Charlotte is in try, when business owners are in try, they have not fully committed to doing the whole thing all the way through. And so getting things done over and over till honestly it maybe becomes a little bit boring, that's whenever you start to get traction. This is not my book. However, the book Good to Great has a really amazing concept. And that concept is the flywheel. It's one of my favorites. If you've been listening to the podcast, you may have heard me talk about it before. The flywheel concept is the concept that you need to visualize a huge, heavy, really hard to move disc. And whenever you start to push that disc, when you are pushing that disc, initially it takes everything out of you. It is super hard. And you are pushing and pushing and pushing. And eventually you make one single rotation. And that has been a lot of hard work. And then you push it again around on the second rotation. And it is just as hard as the first rotation. And so you push again on the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh. And eventually that flywheel begins to move with its own momentum. So the more that you do something over and over again, the more momentum you build, the fewer times that you stop, because every time you stop that flywheel, you start from zero. So every time you stop, you start with the pushing and the hard, difficult task of getting it around one rotation and then 2 rotations. So every time you go to the next big thing and you begin again, you start at zero momentum. So if you pick something and you do it until it has its own momentum and it is picking up speed, and you've got systems and processes in place and you know how to do it, and it's sort of running almost on its own. Sure, you have to put in some effort, but not as much effort as in the beginning. Sure, you need to keep attention to it, but it doesn't take quite the oversight and the enormous effort to do it when you start from zero. So the mistake that Charlotte made in her business was starting and stopping, trying and stopping, doing something once, it didn't work out, stopping and shifting focus to do something else. When we run our businesses with Charlotte in charge, we never get traction. We do not get momentum. So what we need to do is pick something and keep going. There's always going to be a next big thing. There's always going to be somebody who says, I figured out how to do it better. Doesn't mean we never change. It means that when we decide to make a change, we commit to that change. And before we decide to make the change, look at what we've been doing. If what we've been doing has gotten you some momentum, then do you keep going with that? And maybe you add in the new thing in addition to. We don't always have to abandon everything because the next thing has caught our attention. Frankly, when Charlotte Rat is in your business, you have a lot of stops and starts. Momentum is not something that you spend very much time with. And we talked about Charlotte trying. And so in the book, I have a little formula called PFC, and P stands for planning, follow through, and consistency. Just like we talked about Hold and Rat, we need to pick a destination. We need to know where we're going and then plan how to get there. You know, when you're going on vacation, most people don't just put every piece of clothing they own into the car and drive somewhere, and wherever they are, that's where they take their vacation. Generally, you choose where you're going to spend your time. You know what the weather is going to be like, so you know how to pack. You know what activities you're going to do. You have an idea, at least a rough idea, but a definite destination and a rough idea of what you might be doing when you get there. So we need to plan out the things that we're doing. We need to plan out our marketing. We need to plan out our advertising. We need to plan out our social media involvement. We need to make a plan for all of that. And then the second thing is, don't just do it once or do it a half a dozen times and stop, but follow through. And as you're doing it, make an evaluation on, did this work? What's changed from the last time I did this? Am I getting momentum? Is anyone seeing my message? Is this working? And evaluate as you're going through, so that you are following through and evaluating as you move through whatever it is that you're working on in your business. And the third piece is consistency. And consistency is, I have a podcast. I have committed to have one episode per week. So I need to make sure that the episodes have been recorded and I've gotten it to my team. My team edits it and takes care of everything that they need to take care of for the podcast, so that we can send it out, when we can advertise it when it comes out. We can send out, if we have a guest, we can get them the information. They know when their podcast is dropping. We do it every single week. We have systems and processes in place that make it really easy. When I first started doing my podcast, I had no plans. I had no way of doing it. So after we did it a few times, I was like, oh, I need to do this on this day. I need to take care of the show notes, and I have to upload the episode so that the team has time to work on it. So everything as we started, we had to figure things out. Now it works really consistently. I have consistency on my end in producing the podcast, and we are working on the other side and getting it out and being consistent about getting that out. So in terms of my podcast, when I started it, it was that heavy flywheel. It took a lot of effort to figure out all the things that we needed to do. And then once we had it, we planned it out, then we followed through with the plans that we made. And now it has become consistent and it is really easy. I know everything I need to do to get my podcast where it needs to be, to who needs to see it on my teams, so that on Wednesday mornings, it will drop and it will be there on time every week. Now, have we ever failed to get a podcast on time? Yes, we have. However, it was really easy to recover. I think we didn't get it out early in the morning. It came out that afternoon. However, if I didn't have the systems and the plans, the planning, the follow through and the consistency, it might have been days, or I might have missed a week. And when you miss one week, well, then sometimes you miss another week and then another week. And then it's been so long since you did it, you don't even want to go back to it. So PFC, planning, follow through, consistency, and it works for everything, not just podcasts. So here's the thing that you need to think about when you're working on all these ideas in your business. When the next big thing rears its head and says, oh, you need to have TikTok, and oh, now you need to have AI, and now you need to have, and every day there's a new thing you need to have. It's the next big thing. Your business will fail if you don't engage in the next big thing. That's the messages that we're hearing out there. Look at your overall business, and before you jump into the next big thing, evaluate what you're already doing. Ivan Misner says, do one thing 6,000 times, not 6,000 things one time. So evaluate what you're doing, what's working, what's not working. If you've been doing something for a while and it's really not working, maybe you take that out of the mix and bring in a new next big thing. Try that out. Don't try, work that out and see how it works for your business. But, do it in a thoughtful manner, planning, follow through, consistency, and get things moving and operating like a flywheel, so you can determine whether it's going to work for your business, if it's definitely working for your business, or maybe it's not working for your business. So you can make that change. You can, with knowledge, not just, I'm tired of doing this, or I don't know whether it's working or not. I'm just going to try something else, or being very shiny object and going to the next thing. So that is Charlotte Rat. Charlotte is a tentative rat. She's tentatively jumping into everything. She's never committed to anything. So if Charlotte is showing up in your business, it's time to kick her to the curb. She does not belong in your business. I've been sharing a little bit of behind the scenes stories while I'm talking about the book itself and all of the different rats. And I'll be honest with you, Charlotte was inspired by myself. I was Charlotte Rat when we first started our business, because I had to know everything and I had to learn everything. And I was a learner and a doer. And I got to the point where I would start something, do it for a little while, get distracted with the next thing, and not do the next thing. So, not do the previous thing. I was doing the next thing, but not the last thing. And then there was a new next thing. And then I wasn't doing that last thing either. And that actually stalled our progress because I was not being consistent with anything. So once we figured out what was working and we got consistent with the things that were working in our business, we made progress and things began to flip. That flywheel, I'm telling you, it is a true concept. It truly, truly works in the world. So use the flywheel, not my concept, and I love it. So yeah, Charlotte was pretty much inspired by me. As I've said, the rats that are in the business, we've done all of them in our business. I do them in my business today. They all rear their ugly heads they're really adorable heads every now and again in our businesses. The big thing is be aware of it. It's going to happen. And if we are aware of it, then we can go, oh, whoops, hey, Charlotte is visiting. Let's take a step back and figure out a better way to do it so that we are not repeating mistakes over and over. And so I'm not sure if I said this book and this Legendary Business from Rats to Riches is available through me, is also available through Amazon. The workbook itself is only available through me. So you can get both from me, or you can get the book itself from Amazon. And the other thing that we can do if you're interested in getting the book is we have a community where we put all of the gifts that our guests bring to our listeners, their bios, their contact information, anything that we're talking about or offering on the podcast, we keep in a community called profitconnectors.club. That's Profit Connectors, CONNECTORS.CLUB. That's the web address, profitconnectors.club. And inside profitconnectors.club, you will find everything that I've talked about, and you will find information about my book and workbook. I hope that you have enjoyed this series, meeting all of the rats in my book. I truly love all of my rats, the characters that I've created. They make me happy every time I read it. They are near and dear to my heart because they're based on real things. They're based on real people. They're based on my experiences and things that I've seen other people do in their businesses. And honestly, it's charming and fun to read. And if you have to read a business book with pictures. It just makes sense. I've enjoyed sharing my rats with you. I hope that you've enjoyed the series. And don't forget, you are important. What you're doing in the world is important. Thank you for showing up. Your future self will thank you. And don't forget, you have an impact to make in the world. It's your impact. Go make it count. Hey, Profit Connectors, that's it for another Profit Connections podcast. If you're ready to make moves and connections that take your business to the next level and get your gifts and resources, head over to the website, profitconnectors.club. That's profitconnectors.club, and get your goodies right now.